Good evening. Welcome to Chalk Cliffs in the northeast of England. Look at that. Who knew? Not I. That is who. As you can probably hear, quite loud. Lots of seabirds colonies. Meant to be all kinds here. Shags. What else? Cormorants. Seagulls. Lots of different birds. But I am not here to photograph birds, I am here to photograph an archway. But I'm not sure whether it's that way or that way. So I guess the adventure will happen and hopefully we'll find the sea arch. But I'm starting to think it's not that way. I'm starting to think it's more that way. So time to go and explore. Let's do this. It's weird. Here we are. There is my sea arch. Check that out. How cool is that? A little zoom in. But the sun is behind me and I want to be on the other side of that. So a little bit of a mission to go, but definitely worthwhile. How cool is that? The northeast. Who knew? Who knew? Not I. Wow, if you could see what I can see right now, and again, apologize about that little piece of grass that is like directly in the middle of my face, like, oh. But this spot, uber cool, super cool. It'd be cooler if the sun was, you know, going to be further around this way, but I'm not sure if it'll come round as far as that. It might end up being perfect, but what I am getting, it's pretty cool. Check this out. How cool is that? And again, I don't know if that cinematic, my attempt at cinematic B-roll was any good. It might have been terrible. But how cool is this location? Yeah, that's right, uber cool. But, you know, it's that time to get the camera out, get set up, and let's see what we can create. I think first of all, it's gonna be uber wide shot, capturing everything going on. And yeah, easiest way to find the correct composition, you know this already. Let's get that camera out, get that lens on, and get looking for that shot. I don't think this is quite wide enough. And for those of you that are at home, there's one very good way of getting a wider shot, and that is by using an ultra wide lens like I've got right here, 15mm, and then stitching a pano together. So it's been a long time since I've done this, but it seems like the right place to do it. So I want to capture this all. Before I start getting in there and getting a bit more detail in my shots, I want to capture it all. So the first things first, is get the tripod level. When I get my next tripod, I'm definitely going to get a tripod with spikes for feet. And if any of you know if Manfrotto do spikes for feet, that would be great, because then I wouldn't need a new tripod. But look at that bounce. That is so irritating. And there's not really a lot I can do about it. So what I've done to start off with is I just went through my settings. I chose my focal point as the sea arch, and I made sure that was perfectly sharp. And yeah, then zoom out back to f11, and then it should be enough depth of field that it's sharp at the front and at the back. And then I'm going to expose, so I've got the colour in the sky. I'm going to take my first shot with the colour in the sky, and I'm going to fire that off. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to raise my exposure for the sea cliffs, and I'm going to get that nice and sharp. And then I'm going to pan around. I'm going to drop that exposure and get that sky nice and colourful. And then I'm gonna raise that exposure again to get them cliffs nice. And I might not get them identically the same, but what I'll do in editing and stuff is I'll blend them together and make them as close as possible, so as I stitch, it's almost perfect. Or perfect. Perfect would be good. And I'm just gonna keep following that process. And with the panoramic, I'm sure you already know this, but always go wider on the sides so you've got more chance for error and cropping later. What I'll do is I'll do a composite of the darker exposure, and then I'll do a composite of the lighter exposure, and then I'll blend them both together. So I'll make panoramic, sorry, of the lighter exposure, panoramic of the darker exposure, and then I'll blend them together. And fingers crossed, it should be quite a nice image. Now what I don't know what to do is whether to stick around here or to have a little wander a little bit further up and see if there's another composition. What I might do first of all is switch from my wide angle lens and see if I can get a little bit more intimate shots using the wildflowers that are around and that sea arch. So 24 to 70 I think. Time to get it on. So the shot that I'm looking at now, it isn't that different. It should have a slightly different feeling, but it isn't all that different. But I think it's powerful in its own right. And once I get into camera mode, I'll show you what I'm looking at. Okay, so this is what I've got. I've got this beautiful section of grass just down here, and I'm gonna take an exposure of this side over here, all nice and sharp in focus, and then I'm gonna take exposure of the archway nice and sharp. And what I'm really liking is the way that the grass is leading around into the archway. I haven't got the direct light, but that light is coming across and creating the most beautiful glow on this grass. And it just looks lovely. I've centralized the sea arch. It's quite powerful, quite dominant in the scene. I like to centralize things, but it's a nice leading in, leading through, and then beautiful color in the sky. I think it's a nice composition. So I'm gonna shoot this on quite a fast shutter speed for the grass. I don't necessarily want it waving around all over the place. So I'm gonna make sure it's nice and sharp first of all. So I'm gonna shoot that immediate grass on ISO 64 f11, and then I'm gonna shoot that on 1/30th of a second. It's still gonna be moving around, but nowhere near as much as it would be. And that's pretty sharp, check that out. And that light is so beautiful. And then I'm gonna zoom in on that arch, and I'm gonna make sure that archway is super sharp as well. There we are. And then I'm gonna shoot that on the same shutter speeds because I might capture some of them birds moving. And then I'm gonna drop that exposure. So I'm gonna lower my ISO because I wanna get some color in that sky as well. So that's 1/40th of a second, ISO 160. And look at the color in that sky. Look at that light that's getting cast on from that sun. It's just a really nice composition. I do feel like I could stay here and shoot this same spot again and again and again, but I'm not. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go for a little bit of a wander up the coast and see if I can find another composition, because this is only gonna get better. We're still pretty early in the afternoon. Right, get the camera put away and let's go see what we can find. Found an epic composition, but there was a photographer and his missus there, so no talkie happened, but I did manage to capture an image. And check this out, sun star just above the cliff. How good is that? That epic light, excuse the finger, but you know in the final one that won't be there. Epic light across the land, and then just the correct exposure, just enough so that I can blend it all together. And stay to the end for that one. I think it's going to be an absolute epic image. But tonight, that light, look at it on that grass. Isn't that just absolutely fabulous? Just the grass itself is amazing, but everything else is bloody mind-blowing. I'm hoping to get a little bit further along and see if I can find another composition. I might be being greedy, going for number 4, but it's going so well, I don't want to miss out. I don't want to miss out on an option, but this being so close to where I'm living at the moment, it's ideal. This will not be the only time you see me at this place. Faux show. And maybe there's another composition here, but it is capturing the same shot. Look at this. What do you reckon, peeps? Is it worth it? It is starting to look like an elephant though, which is super cool. I like elephants. It reminds me of the bow and fiddle up in the Highlands. If you've not seen that video, link is just above. Feel free to check it out. The conditions were amazing that morning. Anyway, I'm starting to waffle, so I'm gonna carry on walking. Let's see what else we can find. Bye! I think I found my final composition. And yes, oh, sorry, you can see my knees. 1 minute, we're racing time and light. But this is beautiful. Okay, I don't know if it's quite as cool as the shot I had before, but it's still particularly good, if you ask me. But I am the photographer, so I am going to think that. Quite similar, the shots that I've captured already this evening. And I'm not sure if I'm getting close enough in with this lens, but I don't want to make it just about the lighthouse at Flamborough. So this is what it's looking like on the back of my camera. So I've got not really a lot going on in the sky, but I might be able to dodge and burn that and make it more interesting. But I have got Flamborough Lighthouse over here, and if anyone would like to buy a really large version of this image, then you'll see it in a good size, because it is a 36 megapixel camera, which I know in this day and age is nothing, but still a pretty good camera. So I'm going to go f11, I'm going to go ISO 80, and then that gives me an exposure of 1/4 of a second. I'm really liking the way the grass comes round this way and leads round to the headland out here. I've got the lighthouse just on the right hand corner. It's not quite in a third, it's not following the rule of thirds, but I don't like to follow it too much. But look at that light. One thing I'm really glad about that shot actually is the way that this grass is golden and this bit's golden here, because actually if you look above, the cliff is out of the sun, which is not good at all. But because the grass is here and the light's there, it's given the impression that it's golden all the way around, which is working very well for this composition. And look at that. I'm going to zoom in and make sure nothing is in front of my lighthouse. Nope. And now, how cool is that? All the birds flying away. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to wait a little bit for the colour to be in the sky, and then I'll blend that in. But while that's happening, I'm going to set you off with a time lapse to watch what's happening behind me, because it is blooming beautiful. That may have been a horrifically short time lapse, but I managed to get the shot with the colour in the sky. You can probably still see the colour in the sky as we talk. It's going to take a little bit of colour matching, because obviously the sky's pretty pink, and you know, the view is quite yellow, but that's okay. I don't mind doing a bit of colour blending. But one thing that I have found out tonight. This coastline is epic. And if you're ever in the northeast of England, make sure to drop down towards Scarborough and then towards Flamborough and come check out this coastline, because it's blooming beautiful. Like, I mean, like, wow. Wowza. And this won't be the only time you see me here. I imagine I'll be here quite a lot. And just, I know you can't feel it, but even just the warm air blowing in my face. Magical. Absolutely magical. I hope you've enjoyed the vlog, and I will see you next week, because I'm finishing it here. There may be a little bit more photography happening, and make sure to check out my Facebook page, Kieran Husbands Photography. I update it most days with new images, ones that YouTube doesn't see, so check that out. And if nothing else, have a lovely week. Peace out, peeps. Whee!
If you talk all the time, you'll never hear what anybody else has to say. And therefore all you'll have to talk about is your own conversation. The same is true for people who think all the time. That means, when I use the word think, talking to yourself, subvocal conversation, the constant chit-chat of symbols and images and talk and words inside your skull. Now, if you do that all the time, you'll find that you've nothing to think about except thinking.